Hello students, welcome to the PowerPoint for critical review number 3 on the film Lost in Translation. So essentially, critical review number 3 functions exactly the same as the previous two papers you have written this semester. It's the same length, same format requirements, same general structure, including the use of evidence, and the same standard of writing in terms of clarity and evidence of revision. So if we look at the outline, the intro, body, conclusion, and works cited page format stays the same from the last two papers. In the introduction, you present a general brief summary of the movie, including a brief summary of the plot, mention of the two major characters and the actors that played them, then present your thesis statement. Next, you should have two body paragraphs, one of which should deal with the performance of Bill Murray as the character Bob Harris. The other body paragraph should deal with the performance of Scarlett Johansson as the character Charlotte. Next, you should have your conclusion. In your conclusion, I would like you to address the nature of the romance that is at the center of the story of Lost in Translation, analyzing whether or not it is a doomed or failed romance and what that means for the characters. And finally, as always, you should have a works cited page. I have provided you an appropriate citation for the film. If we look at the introduction section of the paper, step 1 requires you to provide a brief summary of the film, talk about the two main characters, and mention the actors that played them. You should also mention the director, Sofia Coppola. This should be 3 to 4 sentences. Next up, you should address the thesis statement. If you look at the question provided here, that is taken from the assignment sheet, and it asks you to focus on how Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson performed their characters. Are they using naturalistic or non-naturalistic acting types? How does Murray and Johansson's acting choices help you to learn about their characters? Finally, how are these acting choices, like hints or signs, used to construct the characters? Now, your thesis statement does not need to address all three of these questions. It should only address one of the questions, but if you see and kind of look at them, you can see how they're all sort of interconnected. They're not entirely different questions. Okay? So, at its core, your thesis statement must address how the acting of Johansson and Murray shows the transformation of their characters throughout the film. Right? How do the performances of the two actors show you that the characters have grown and changed during this short time in Tokyo? In your answer, please make sure to note if the acting choices by Murray and Johansson are naturalistic acting choices or non-naturalistic acting choices. To remind yourself on the acting and performances in Lost in Translation, please feel free to reference the other PowerPoints found on Blackboard. Body paragraphs. Like your other two critical reviews, your body paragraph should have 3 parts: topic, sentence, evidence, and explanation. You should have one body paragraph that addresses the acting choices of Bill Murray and one body paragraph that references the acting choices of Scarlett Johansson. They can come in any order. So if we look at the topic sentence, think of the topic sentence as the sentence that it should express the point you're going to prove with your evidence from the film. So a topic sentence could address how Bill Murray or Scarlett Johansson used their acting technique to demonstrate the growth or change in their character in the movie. You would then provide evidence that proves that topic sentence. As always, evidence should be introduced, then it should be described, and then it should be explained how it relates to the thesis and topic sentence of the paragraph. Remember that no description of a film can exist on its own. So as you introduce the scene you're going to analyze in the film, make sure you mention when it takes place in the movie, the context before the scene, and who are the main characters in it. Is it a scene just with Bill Murray? Is it a scene with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson? Does it take place at the beginning, middle, or end of the film? As you're describing your scene, don't forget to describe the acting choices. How does the acting show the character's motivation? Please describe things like body language, facial expressions, dialogue, tone of voice, clothing. If the scene uses a close-up to focus in on the characters' faces, Mention that. Describe how the camera is allowing you to see their emotions on their face in close-up. After you are done describing the scene and the performance, make sure you explain how this performance relates to the growth of the character. How does the scene you present show that the character is learning or thinking about something that is important to their character? As always with explaining evidence, this should be the last thing you do in any body paragraph. Right? It should revolve in trying to prove the topic you brought up in your topic sentence. It should explain what is important about the scene you described in terms of acting choices, camera movement, or dialogue. And it should relate to your thesis statement. Always remember that it's important to explain why your scene is important as what your scene is talking about. Finally, the conclusion. In the conclusion, I would like you to address whether or not the relationship between Bob and Charlotte represents a doomed romance. Much of the scholarship and essays written on the film Lost in Translation obviously focus on the failed nature of this romance. The film, directed by Sofia Coppola, does not present the romance as a traditional standard Hollywood romance. The characters share a few, awkward kisses, a few lingering moments, but there is no or none of the dramatic markers that signify a true standard Hollywood romance. But since it's lacking these, the question I would really ask you to answer is, does the fact that Bob and Charlotte don't enter into a romantic relationship mean the relationship was a failure? Even though they were not romantic, and the movie ends and we have no knowledge of whether or not they'll become romantic, in fact, I think the film implies that they will strongly not become romantic. Does this represent a failed relationship? Or does the fact that it wasn't romantic say something important and meaningful about what this relationship meant to our two characters? Finally, just as a reminder, here once again is the outline for critical review number 3. The introduction, 2 body paragraphs, one on Bill Murray's performance, one on the performances by Scarlett Johansson. Finally, a conclusion that addresses the failed romance and what that might mean. Just as a reminder, this PowerPoint, along with the video, can be watched on Blackboard, and the PowerPoint can be downloaded to help you write the paper. Good luck.